Both of us ate a lot of sriracha. I think we'd go through 2 or 3 bottles of like sriracha a week.
What kind of led you even to start a business?
We did not have any intention of starting a business. Whoops. Because I was trying to imagine myself as a like 50-year-old bar musician. Like I had a hard time doing that. I didn't want to do that. So I was like, I should be hot sauce entrepreneur instead.
How did you all land Whole Foods?
Whole Foods like called us. We see YellowBird is everywhere. We'd like to put it in Whole Foods. And I was like, you do?
Hello, I'm your host, Mike Gelb, and this is the Consumer VC Podcast, brought to you by Propeller Industries, the leading strategic finance and accounting partner for venture stage companies. On this show, we discuss the intersection of venture capital and consumer innovation. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe on YouTube or whichever platform you're viewing this content, Spotify, Apple. And if you want the full experience, I highly recommend checking out the newsletter at theconsumervc.com. You'll get weekly updates of all the fundraisers that's happened, distribution news for consumer brands, as well as notifications on when the latest episodes drop. So check out theconsumervc.com and feel free to subscribe to that newsletter. All content and episodes are for informational and entertainment purposes only and is not investment advice. This podcast episode was a little bit different. This was a live podcast from South by Southwest in Austin. Thank you so much for Michael Best and Mark Nathan for hosting us. It was a pleasure chatting with George Milton and Erin Link. They are the founders of YellowBird sauce, which is one of my favorite hot sauces. They have the Serrano, Habanero, Jalapeno, Sriracha, Blue Agave Sriracha, and I think Ghost Peppers, and I think a few others as well. They're in places like Whole Foods and also Walmart. It was pretty amazing hearing how they got into Whole Foods, how they also got into Walmart, and also how their approach to retail expansion was. George has been on the podcast. He was actually the first guest. Thank you, George, back in 2020 when I was first starting this thing. But this was so great doing this live with George, meeting him in person, also having Erin on as well. And hearing about Erin, how her approach to actually building the brand of YellowBird and how her approach to kind of branding and positioning for YellowBird too. So this was a fun one. Really great chatting with them. Highly recommend checking it out. And well, I guess you are checking it out. So here they are, George and Erin.
Thank you so much, Mark, for having us. Thank you so much, Michael Best, for producing this whole thing, and also Funded House and Q Branch. George and Erin, so great to finally meet you both in person. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, no, really appreciate it. How many of you all are CPG founders or in the consumer space? Oh, good. All right. Awesome. Well, I'm Mike. I founded this podcast called The Consumer VC, podcast / newsletter, interview venture capitalists, and obviously incredible founders like George and Erin. Huge fan of your sauces. Our entire family is also big fans of your sauces, so this is gonna be a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, let's start with how did you both meet each other?
We classic love story. We met at a bar in Houston. I was a dueling piano bar player for a long time, and Erin was in there with a bunch of her friends.
It was love at first sight.
It was for one of us. It was. It took a little while. It took me about a year of convincing her to hang out with me. So, but yeah, that was in Houston. We lived in Houston then.
So I know, George, you were always a hot sauce fan. You put hot sauce in everything. Was it same with you, Erin?
So I got introduced to hot sauce when I was in college, of course, eating the super cheap food and just drenching it in the very well-known other sriracha. And that was kind of my first intro into super spicy food.
Got it. And I imagine now you're still eating a lot more?
From there, I started working in a Mexican restaurant called Hugo's in Houston, and obviously they have a lot of spicy food, being an authentic Mexican restaurant, and ate a lot of habaneros there, fell in love with fresh habaneros, so yeah, didn't ever look back. So
that's awesome. So is that part of the reason, why did you, because I know that the first sauce that you all started with was the habanero, right? Why was it the habanero and not a jalapeno or a serrano?
We were just making it for ourselves. We did not have any intention of starting a business. Whoops. So we were just we were just both of us ate a lot of sriracha. I think we'd go through like 2 or 3 bottles of like sriracha a week. And
Wow.
I know, right? Yeah, thank you, whoever clapped for that. But it was it got to the point where we were like, okay, we wanted something because that stuff is like it's like half sugar and preservatives and like and it wasn't spicy enough at a certain point, so we wanted something that was like spicier and just made with food instead of like sugar and preservatives. So that's kind of how we started. Was we were just making something for us, and it was there were like a million different versions of it. So we didn't have a business plan or anything that a VC fund or anybody would like when we were making sauce. We were just making sauce.
But to answer your question, a habanero is just a superior pepper. So
Yeah, it's pretty great. So we had at one point, Erin was growing. We moved from Houston to Austin, and at one point, Erin was like, we tilled up our backyard. Like we rented like a commercial tiller and tilled up our little backyard and grew how many pepper plants?
100 pepper plants.
We had 100 habanero plants.
I won't do that again.
In our backyard. We had like rows. We have like just a regular ass backyard, and we had like rows of like peppers, like it looked like a tiny farm, and so that's what we made. First was the habanero sauce because we loved it, and then when we actually started a business, I refused for like 3 years to make another product. Again, things that like investors would probably hate, but we didn't have any then, so.
Well, I mean, you both were consuming so much of your own sauces. What kind of led you even to start a business in terms of like actually giving out this? What was it? Giving out to friends? Friends started liking it, or like what was like the?
It didn't take a lot. We had a lot of friend dinner parties, and one of his friends was like, "You should bottle this and sell it." And he was like,
I think everybody
"Yes, we should."
Everybody has a friend who says that about something that you make, right? So we didn't take it like too seriously because it was just. People say that about, so like I was playing in bars when we first moved here. Like I was a bar musician. And so like we would have little like versions of it. And I would just like take it around to people and be like, hey, try this. And like it got to the point where people would come up to me like at a bar and be like, hey man, hey, that was a good set and everything. And I was like trying to sell albums because I was a musician. I was like, man, I'm going to make it. I'm in Austin. I'm going to make it. And they'd be like, no, dude, but I heard that you're like the hot sauce guy. You got some. So instead of like carrying albums in my bag, I would just carry like hot sauce in my bag. And after a while of doing that, I was like, should we?
He was the real Beyonce.
Yeah, right. I was like, after a while of doing that, I was like, should we like do, because I was trying to imagine myself as a like 50-year-old bar musician, and I had a hard time doing that. I didn't want to do that. So I was like, I should be a 50-year-old like hot sauce entrepreneur instead. So we started making it and like taking it to like my first customer was a guy at one of the bars that I played at, and he opened up a corn dog stand on 6th Street, so like right down the road from here in front of Pete's and like Buckshots and whatever. And so he like sold corn dogs, and it was just like unlabeled habanero sauce at a corn dog stand. And then we were like, we need to put a label on it.
We should put some ingredients on this bottle.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, since of course you were obviously like experimenting, figuring out what like the best flavor profile or what the best kind of like ingredients mix was right. Did you ever have like bad batches?
Yeah, like most of them until we got the. Well, so we have kind of a funny story about like. There's a bunch of funny stories about early batches that we made that were pretty bad, but like I went through a phase where I would like trying a bunch of different stuff, and I would just like go to a bunch of different like local restaurants in town and be like, "What do you think about this? Does this suck?" And the answer was yes, a lot of times. But like we were doing this thing we were doing like natural fermentation, like initially like you would do with like a gochujang or something like that. And I was trying to figure out a different way to do fermentation, and so I was using like different yeasts to ferment like pepper sauces, and I used a champagne yeast one. You remember the story, but like at one point I was using champagne yeast to ferment peppers, and then I make it in a hot sauce. And so what you're supposed to do is you use the yeast to like ferment the sauce, and then you do a cook to like kill the yeast to like stop it. But I had a particularly like virile, like, I don't know, it was just a very strong yeast, and so I did a cook that was supposed to kill the yeast, and then I bottled it and I took it around to some restaurants, and there was a chef at, where was it?
We took it to Whippin'.
Whippin', yeah.
And this is maybe like 2015, 2014.
Yeah.
This is a while ago.
This was 2012. This was a long time ago.
Yes.
This was before we had a recipe, but like I took it there, and like the chef like called me like really mad. She thought I was trying to like play a prank on her because she opened it and it like exploded like to the ceiling, like champagne, right? Because it's champagne yeast. And so we had like that batch, and we took him in the backyard. We were like, surely it can't be that bad. And we were like popping bottles in our backyard, and it was like 20 feet. It was like, I'm glad we didn't hurt anybody, but that was pretty bad.
She took the sauce after that. She said, yeah.
She did. Yeah, they were one of our first customers when we finally got it right. Because I think she just wanted to be like, okay, you got it. But we had
Fun
another
joke. But yeah, tell me.
We had another one where like we would do the Austin Chronicle Hot Sauce Festival. So the very first year we did that, we entered as individuals. They used to have an individual category. I don't know if anybody here knows that. I don't know how many locals are, but like, so they used to have the Austin Hot Sauce Festival. They would have like a individual category and then a commercial category. And so we entered the individual category, and they had this tasting tent, and it was like 220 something different sauces, and they put them in like the just like the same containers and with just numbers on them. And so people were unbiased, and then people would, it was like blind taste tests, and people would try them. And so I went down the line, and I found the one that I had made. And so I just kind of camped out, and I was like, this is early market research, but like I just camped out, and I was like watching people. I was like, it's 47, and I was just watching 47 to see what people and like we had like people actually like spit it on the ground. It was just like, so yes, to answer your question in a very long way, yeah, we had some pretty bad versions. I think that was the question.
Yeah. Well, I guess what point then did you feel like you had maybe like an acceptable or decent, version of it to finally, I know that you all went through like farmers markets and got in there, but like where it actually makes sense to actually commercialize it?
Well, you remember our first...
It was all me. He was making all of these like funky batches that were just kind of they're all right. And he had to go out of town for a gig, and he was like, I'm just gonna throw all of the stuff that we have into a pot, see what happens. Blend it up, put it in the fridge, and then he's out of town. And so I'm home like eating this. I'm like, this is really good. What is this? And I keep eating it. It's so good. Super spicy, super creamy. Just everything about it was perfect. When he got home, I was like, this is the sauce. I was like, what did you do? And he said, I have no idea. I have no recipe. So now I have to reverse engineer my own hot sauce recipe. But that was ultimately how we landed on the habanero hot sauce. It was accident.
Wow. So what was that process then, getting into farmers markets and kind of commercializing it and actually getting like the product out there?
I think it was kind of an ongoing, and anybody who's done any sort of business, there's kind of some hurdles that you have to jump over at every stage. So like farmers market, you have to make it in a commissary kitchen. You have to be inspected and all that sort of stuff. Which for the hot sauce festival and the like local kind of people, the corn dog stand, like you didn't have to have any of that stuff. You didn't need an ingredient label or any of that stuff to sell unmarked hot sauce to a corn dog stand. But once you get in farmers markets, you've got to get your health certificate and
sourcing as well. Is that like, could you still like use your own peppers, or do you have to also start to partner with farmers?
Yeah, we were using our own peppers, and then getting stuff at like Costco or like working with like local. So we'd go to like Brothers Produce or Hardy's Produce or something. Once we started getting a little more volume than we could get at the grocery store or something. So like it was kind of a mix of local and then like local kind of wholesalers or distributors. And
we would oftentimes just buy that entire basket of habaneros at Fiesta or something, But yeah.
So how did you land? And like one of like the first big accounts you all got into is Whole Foods. How did you all land Whole Foods?
Well, so in the early days when we first did put a label on it, finally, it had my cell phone number on it, which doesn't anymore. But we were selling it to a couple of local places in town. So like Counter Cafe and Gourmands, rest in peace.
And at that point, it was already in Wheatsville.
It was in Wheatsville,
Yeah.
but we had it in a couple of we literally had 2 Wheatsvilles and then like 3, 2 Counter Cafes, and Gourmands, and then Whole Foods called us. They used to have a local forager program, and so it's just somebody, because the Whole Foods office is here, and they called my phone one day and they were like, "Hey, we would like to put YellowBird. We see YellowBird is everywhere. We'd like to put it in Whole Foods." And I thought it was a joke. I thought somebody was playing a joke on me, but when they said they saw it everywhere, it was like the Whole Foods global team or Southwest team or whatever would just go to the 3 restaurants that I sold YellowBird to. So that was I could not have done it. I didn't do it on purpose, but I could not have planned that better. They were just cycling these 3 restaurants for lunch every day. And so according to them, I was everywhere. YellowBird was in every restaurant that they ever went to. And so they were like, "We just see it all over the place." And I was like, "You do?" And they said they were like, "We want to put it in, we would like to put it in the 4 Whole Foods in the Austin area. Can you do that?" And I was like, "That seems like a lot of volume. Let me see if I can figure it out." And so we figured out the commissary kitchen first because I needed more commissary kitchen time. And so I called him back. We were doing a bunch of shuffling to figure out okay, well, how many cases do we think they're going to need every week? And so we got enough commissary kitchen time. We figured out where we were going to get all the ingredients. And I called them back and I was like, "We're ready for those 4 stores." And they're like, "We think it should be 40 though." And I was like,
Oh.
But
okay.
So at that point, we were maxing out at a case a week, maybe 2 cases a week.
I think
And how much were in a case?
12 bottles.
We did 12 in a case.
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So not a lot. Yeah. Wasn't a lot.
Those were the 19-ounce bottles, so the big bottles, but still, it was not very much sauce.
So that's when we tried. Out co-packing for the first time. I think when we launched with Whole Foods. So we went and found co-manufacturer for our sauce for our Whole Foods launch, and then we had to do a recall for our first batch because they were adding water to our product. It was a whole we had a time. Now that I think about it, we really had a time.
Well, I mean, so when you actually then got to the co-manufacturer on the sourcing side, is this when you also were going to farmers and also sourcing directly from farmers the raw ingredients, the peppers, I'd imagine fruits as well, because those were in the hot sauces too. Or were you still kind of going to Costco and going to maybe different grocery stores to buy the ingredients?
So we were doing a little bit. We were doing a little bit of everything. The dream for us at that time was to launch a fully organic hot sauce that was scalable. So we had already started talking to farmers to see if we could contract organic peppers because organic has never been, in some categories organic is really big, but you don't see a lot of organic hot sauces or organic peppers because people don't really ask for them, right? So people will take a fully organic meal and put Tabasco on it or something, which is not organic. So we were trying to okay, we want a fully organic hot sauce. The hardest thing to source organic was the chilies, and then you have your garlic and onions, and then citrus is a little easier. Organic vinegar is pretty easy. Organic sugar, whatever, all that sort of stuff is pretty easy. And there's no such thing as organic salt. So just
organic water.
If you didn't know that, no such thing as organic salt. It's a mineral. Can't be organic. But people ask us about that every week. Why don't you guys use organic salt in your organic sauces? And we're like, well, let me tell you. But no, at that time we were still kind of doing a mixture of whatever. We would buy peppers and carrots, and depending on the season, we'd onions and stuff from Johnson's Backyard Garden. Again, rest in peace. That's a local. It was a local 200-acre farm that was just east of Austin. And we sourced more and more stuff from them. We ended up, like, there was a little while where I was like working directly with family farms in like the Yucatan in Mexico. So that was a kind of that was a wild time as well. We had there's like a lot of wild times. There's like going down to the Yucatan and like making these deals. And I do not speak very good Spanish either. So just going down there and like making deals with these like local family farms and then like shaking hands with them and being like, oh man, do we think that stuff is going to show up? That anyway,
Did it?
sometimes, and sometimes it didn't. So that's, but we were kind of doing whatever. We have at this point we have a pretty steady supply chain, but that's kind of a result of doing everything, and everything ourselves and kind of seeing what stuck. And by the time we saw what stuck, we had like redundant supply chain. And then when like Hui Fong is like out of peppers because they have one supplier and it didn't work out, we're like, you know, a tenth of their size and we have 10 suppliers. So we're all good. But that was kind of by accident. We kind of backed into that.
Well, I was gonna say, so it seems like that the first time that you worked with a co-man when you got into Whole Foods, sounds like it wasn't a great relationship or didn't get off to a good start. Can you talk a little bit about like because I know that you now like have your own manufacturing facility and everything, as you say, like you are much more vertically integrated. Talk to me about like why that kind of didn't work out with like actually having someone like having a co-man rather than like doing it all yourselves.
Yeah, I mean, having a co-manufacturer it can be a blessing and a curse. Obviously, anybody familiar with co-manufacturing? Okay, cool. All right. So,
How many of you love your co-man?
how many of you are a co-man? I mean, it can be a blessing and a curse, because if you're going to scale something, it is probably the least capital intensive way to scale a product up. You don't have to open a facility and have HR and, you know, deal with OSHA and organic certifications and audits and all that stuff. You just go do like sales, marketing, and customer support and all that sort of stuff. So for us, the big thing was that when we did finally put together a business plan, we were like, the only way this works is if we can scale up the farmer's market quality. Like the product has to still be this good when we're making 1,000 or 10,000 or 1 million of them. It has to still be this good. So we went to a co-manufacturer and we were like, fresh carrots, fresh peppers, go. And they're like, no, yeah, because that's hard and it's expensive and it's, you know, because we do all of that stuff now ourselves. Like we have our own, you know, like a 30,000 square foot manufacturer, like hot sauce factory now. I know, pretty cool, right? And that is very hard. It's really, I mean, it's every day to bring in fresh stuff. And then, you know, like we're always like going through, we are always going through the process map and being like, where can we be more efficient? Because on the consumer side, right, the customer, especially like right now, is very sensitive to the price, right? We're like, Walmart is one of our biggest customers. We do business with Costco, so people are sensitive to what the price is. So like carrots is our number one ingredient. Like that's by volume the largest ingredient that we use. There's a lot of fibers in carrots. When I was first doing it myself, it would take me 10 hours to like stew the carrots to where you could turn them into a sauce and not have it be all pulpy. So like doing the process map for that at scale is tough. It's very tough. And so it was very hard going to a co-manufacturer and saying, this is what we have to do. And they're sitting there trying to figure out how to make some pennies off of a bottle. I mean, that's a hard business to be in as well. And it's like, they look at it and they're like, we can't stew carrots for 8 hours or 10 hours or whatever. So what about if we use like a carrot flavoring or a carrot powder or something like that? Or we're going to add water because that makes the process go faster. So it was not what we wanted to scale up ultimately.
Yeah, so you were kind of forced to make some like concessions, probably also because still you're still like a small brand at that point, right? Like you just got into 40 stores in Whole Foods, which is incredible, but it's still like not you still like weren't at scale. You probably weren't even like a priority probably for like the co-man either.
No,
right?
yeah, I don't think we were a priority for anybody.
Well, I mean, like, so it seems like, but it seems like since obviously you're in Whole Foods, you're obviously in Walmart, you're in Costco. It seems like you were still able, even though it was like a bad batch or wasn't, the flavor wasn't quite right, you were still able to sell through in Whole Foods and kind of, and people clearly kept buying it. Was that difficult because you felt like the quality wasn't there?
Well, we didn't sell the stuff that was not
didn't?
good. Yeah, we took all of that stuff back, and then I made it. I made the replacement. I made all of it. Yeah, because they're like we fired them, but we didn't have any place else to go.
Right.
So I actually had a commissary kitchen. It was like what 1,200 square feet.
Yeah, it was tiny.
So I had like signed a lease on this little. It used to be a catering kitchen or something.
Yes.
In Round Rock, and it was like 1,200 square feet. It had a little office and a little cooler, and so I was just in there. And so when we were in the co-packer, like we still had that space. I was like subletting it out to a couple of other. There was a chocolate company in there, and then there was another guy making hot sauce in there too. And so when I had to pull all that stuff back from Whole Foods, I don't know how many hours I was in that kitchen, but it was like just a solid like 2 weeks of just like remaking everything and just like bottling it myself for like 40 Whole Foods.
This episode is brought to you by Propeller Industries. If you run a high-growth business and you're focused on profitability, extending your runway, and improving your operational efficiency, you probably need a finance and accounting whiz that will grow with you. Well, instead of hiring someone full-time, what would be cost-effective is working with Propeller Industries. Propeller Industries is a leading strategic finance and accounting partner for venture-stage companies and has partnered with over 1,000 startups and high-growth businesses across consumer products, consumer tech, and enterprise. Some of the brands that they've worked with are Liquid Death, Olipop, Hims, Farmer's Dog, Away, MoviePass, and Giphy. Propeller also provides specialized support for fundraising and M&A with transaction advisory services. Propeller's TA team of former investment bankers and investors can step in on more of a project basis when pursuing full-scale financing and M&A. There's a link to Propeller Industries in the show notes if you want to learn more information.
Was Whole Foods pretty understanding that they had to go back and kind of redo everything?
I mean, we got to stay in Whole Foods, so to the extent that they didn't immediately kick us out, yeah, they were understanding, and Whole Foods has always been really good. I don't know what it's like now to start as a small brand in Whole Foods, but for the time that we were like growing, they were very, very good at being a large company that dealt with really small companies. And so they were like, yeah, basically like you get one, but like get it right because this is not the product that we bought for our stores.
Yeah, and I mean, they did give us like another good chance. They realized that we had product issues, and we're like, yeah, we do have product issues that we need to fix. And so they said, fix it, and we'll put you back on the shelf.
Got it. And then after those 40 stores, like what was like the next kind of growth opportunity that you all were like thinking about? Seriously, I mean, obviously it first was let's get our manufacturing, kind of right. Was that at that point you both thought we need to open like our own facility? Maybe we need to raise money in order to raise our own facility, or like how did you think about solving manufacturing issues you were experiencing at scale?
So we actually found in 2015. Oh boy. So in 2014 we launched with Whole Foods, and we moved all our packaging to glass bottles. At that point, there was kind of like in the natural industry, there was a lot of we initially launched our product. I don't know how many people are familiar with our product, but it's squeeze bottle hot sauces. We initially launched in like squeeze bottles with hot sauce. It was sriracha but better in Austin. And so the squeeze bottle was like a big part of the product. And we went into Whole Foods. There was a lot of clamor kind of around packaging in the natural space about that plastic is not as reusable. We all know, like plastic. We know. I don't have to tell you about plastic, but people were not a fan of it. And so when we launched in Whole Foods, and it was also easier for co-packers to deal with, to hot fill in glass, right? So like when we launched in Whole Foods, we launched in glass packaging, and all of the same people who demanded the glass packaging did not buy it because it was not as good of a product.
They wanted to squeeze it. They can't squeeze that glass.
So we ended up switching back to plastic bottles. In 2015, we did find a pretty good co-packer who actually like worked through the process with us, and they were doing a pretty good job for a while. And then anyway, I'll talk a little bit of shit about them. Why not? They're not here. But they kind of wanted to make it. They got to the point where they wanted to make it cheaper and easier, and they eventually kicked us out. They fired us. And I had to show up with a moving truck and get all my stuff out. It was a very fun day. But basically, at that point, they fired us, and we got them to do one last production run at triple the price. They agreed to do it at triple the price, and we had enough inventory for 3 months. So we're out here. At this point, we've got 3 regions of Whole Foods. So that was our next growth, was expansion just with Whole Foods, because we kind of like figured out how to talk to the Whole Foods customer and do that stuff. But so we had 3 regions of Whole Foods, probably about 150 stores total when you included all of our local stuff here. Plus we were doing online business. I don't want to skip over that because Erin, meanwhile, had built this amazing brand and built our website and built the social media. And she did that by herself, right? While I'm like making sauce and dealing with.
I was like, e-com, baby, let's go.
Yeah, before e-com was a thing. This is back before e-com was a thing. You understand? But like, so we're like out in the cold with 3 months of inventory, and so we were kind of at that point. This was, when was this? This was like July of 2016. We got kicked out, and we got 3 months of inventory. And so we started looking for a place. We had started a fundraise because we were like looking at slotting fees and looking at growing the brand. So we had started a fundraise already, like a seed round. And that basically turned into like, we need to open our own place, because if we're going to scale it, it's only worth scaling if you've got, you guys know the 4 P's of marketing, right? The first one is product. So like, we were like, we have to have a great product if we're going to go up against like, it's a huge, our hot sauce is a huge category. Everybody's cousin has a hot sauce, right? That they're like, oh, we could sell this. I get 3 or 4 emails or calls a week. Hey, my brother has a hot sauce. How does he start a hot sauce company? With a buddy of mine here in town, we made an online course for free, a free course called How to Start a Hot Sauce Company, so that I could deflect people to that when they say. So it's a very crowded category. So if you're like gonna go up against the huge incumbents and go up against everybody's cousin and brother and uncle who's got a hot sauce recipe, we were like, we want to only scale the best recipe, the best product. So that's what that raise turned into. Was we were like just frantically looking for a place that we could within 3 months get certifiable somehow. So
then you actually had enough money to actually start your own manufacturing facility and actually own much more of your supply chain.
We did. It was literally by the skin of our teeth. Not literally, that doesn't make any sense, but it was by the skin of our teeth, by the figurative skin of our teeth, that we got it in time. But yeah, that's when we opened like manufacturing at a small scale.
Were you finding like, just on the podcast, I've had quite a few investors on it. It seems like in the CPG world, it's maybe sometimes there's like a divide for those that actually want, brands that actually have like CapEx and actually have like the competitive advantage of like being vertically integrated, versus, hey, we actually want to be asset light and like use like co-mans. Were you finding that it was actually a hard pitch to do, or to say the fact that you actually wanted to own your like manufacturing facility, or not as much?
So it became for the group that did our seed round, it was not a hard pitch because they loved the product and they were like, why wouldn't you scale this amazing product? Do whatever you have to do, right? Like, those are seed round people. Those are your people in the seed round, right? If you don't find your people in the seed round, you are screwed. So like, it did become harder because we did a couple of rounds after that, and it did become harder talking to people and saying, we own our manufacturing and we want to keep owning our manufacturing, because there are a lot of funds that, I mean, every fund is a little different. Every investor, angel investor, everybody's a little different. And so like, that's kind of one of those that you have up front. That's the like, hey, if you don't want to do this, then let's not go to all the, right? We don't have to go through the 6 weeks of diligence or whatever. If you don't want to do this, and I learned that pretty fast, so I could like save us some time when I had the initial conversation. Hey, we do our own manufacturing and we're going to keep doing it. Okay, well, our fund doesn't really, would you be interested in not doing that so that we can talk? I'm like, no, that's what we do, right? But like after COVID, that became a huge benefit. Like it for a while it was a liability when I talked to people, and then it was like, and then every fund that I talked to after, I don't know, April of 2020 was like, we love brands that do their own manufacturing. And I was like, really? Because I talked to you 9 months ago and you only worked with brands that do co-packing. So,
wow, that's really, really interesting. Erin, how did you also? Because I know that like everything that's kind of in the bottle is kind of George's domain, and everything kind of out of the bottle is like your domain. What was your approach to the overall brand of YellowBird, and also how did you all decide on YellowBird just as a name too?
I can't take all credit for that. He actually came up with a name first, and at that point, it was still very new. We didn't have a label. We didn't have any kind of graphics, any imagery at all. He just had this idea for the name YellowBird, and I said, why? And he said, I don't know. I'm like, that's not good enough. I need a story. Give me a good story to tell. So my background is in branding and design, and so I really wanted a good story before I did any work on it. At this point, I was also working a full-time job. So he went and did some research and found out that there is this little yellow bird that lives in the Thai chili gardens and eats the chili peppers. It flavors its body so mammals don't eat it, right? Because mammals don't like spicy food, most of them. So after that, I said, cool, that's a great story. Let's make this into a brand. We talked about it for probably weeks until, we finally said, okay, we want to make it this really fun, approachable thing that's not the typical thing that you see on the shelf that is the skulls and crossbones and death hot sauce. We wanted it to be fun. He had this idea of like sort of Tweety Bird approachable, and obviously I was like, well, we're in Austin, let's make it like cool Austin. So I'm not saying that I'm the absolute best at branding, but I came up with something fairly quickly and we're like, let's go with it. So if I showed the original version of the YellowBird logo now, it would look totally different.
Let's get it up on the screen. Do we have that slide?
But at the same time, it's very like cool, kind of tattoo, like Austin style. And once we realized, okay, we have to trademark this, I had to clean it up. I had to make it like actually trademarkable. And then, we went with that and we stuck with it, and people some people loved it, some people were unsure of it. They're like, what is this little sunshine corn thing? I have no idea what this is. Some people are like, oh, I love this angry bird. So, we had a lot of mixed reviews about the thing, but people love the sauce. So at the end of the day, it was like, this is weird, this is different, let's pick this. And then they fell in love with the sauce. But yeah, it was a process. It took a while.
No, that's really interesting, kind of just counterpunching what all the other obviously like hot sauce brands are kind of known for doing. How'd you think about e-com? Because when it comes to, I know we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but like CPG and e-com, it's tough, right? Because ultimately they're not huge. It's not a huge amount of money you're actually paying, and e-com really only works. I think if it's actually like your AOV is pretty high just because they're shipping, a lot of kind of costs incurred from like that standpoint. How did you think about what you wanted to accomplish on e-com? Because I'd imagine like driving people into the store is maybe even more valuable than actually making the purchase online. But how did you all think about it?
I think I made our website in 2014, maybe. And at that point, it just had a PayPal button. That was it. And it was just our habanero sauce, so there's only one way you could buy it. And that was mainly just like for people that weren't in Austin, that couldn't go to Wheatsville, that couldn't go to the Whole Foods here, that wanted to try it. So I think our first out-of-state sale was to New York. Maybe it was 2013, just with that like silly little PayPal button. And then eventually we moved to WordPress WooCommerce. So really the website was just to give people that weren't in Texas local the option to try it and buy it. But yeah, it was just a kind of a sampling thing. But people were paying for the shipping, they were paying for the product, they were paying for everything. So it worked. There was no advertising we were doing aside from the Instagram post that we had, you know?
Yeah, you said AOV. That's like a lot more sophisticated than the e-com that we did, which was just
yeah.
that we had it and you
I was
could buy
fulfilling it out of our garage, you know? Yeah.
It's amazing. That's amazing. Okay. So you went into Whole Foods on the distribution side. You started off in 40 stores. You expanded to 3 different territories. One of the things that I think is really fascinating about YellowBird and what's really hard to do. First of all, I mean, obviously it's really hard to get into Whole Foods, but going from like natural channel to like conventional grocery is really difficult. I know like Kroger, that's like a huge account for you all. Walmart's a huge account for you all. Costco. How were you able to kind of make that switch, and how did you also think about your pricing as well when it comes to going into conventional?
So it's not an easy switch to make, but anybody who's trying to make a business out of it is thinking about going to conventional, because natural is like 2% of the market. It's not a lot. So we started thinking about it years ago. I mean, the original kind of value proposition was that we wanted to be able to make a best-in-class product and have it be an affordable price, right? We were never going to be like, when we went into Whole Foods, we said that our retail price was going to be $7.99 on the shelf, and they were like, you can't do that. The most expensive hot sauce that we carry and will ever carry is $3.50 or so, $3.49.
At the same time, that was half the size, or less than half the size of our bottle.
Right.
Yeah.
But like from a unit cost standpoint, they didn't want it to be that expensive, and we kind of convinced them to give it a try and see if like let their customer decide, and they did. And so now that's the average retail in Whole Foods for hot sauce is $7.99, and a lot of stuff has changed since then. They have a few that are cheaper, but like, you know, you can go to Whole Foods and get a bottle of hot sauce for $20 or $30. And so it was just, they didn't know that people were willing to pay a little more in that category. That being said, like, we wanted it to be a value for what you were getting always. So like our first big, I guess, conventional account, we went into H-E-B and Walmart at the same time in 2018, which was probably a mistake and probably a little too early to go into Walmart, to be quite honest, because we got, you know, like we were selling Walmart the same stuff that we were selling to Whole Foods, and Walmart can just do a lot more to come down on price. So we sold it at the same price, and Walmart was like 25% cheaper. And so we got a bunch of kind of, I don't know, we're not, to go back to an earlier thing, we're not anybody's first priority, really. Like, but people were like, hey, we're price matching, and looks like Walmart has it cheaper. We need to get it cheaper too. And we were like, oh no, what have we done, right? But that was kind of our foray into conventional, was with H-E-B.
But they would price match Walmart to the point that they were losing money. Like, that's how intense the price wars are.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
So we kind of learned a lot. We learned a lot about pricing kind of by accident, because we had stuff that was like, you know, at Whole Foods at one price, at Walmart another price, and we kind of could look at Velocities and like, it's on Amazon for a different price. So yeah, I mean, I think it's ongoing. Like, what did you nail the price for us, so we ended up making a form factor that was exclusive to Walmart, so that we could hit a unit price that works in Walmart.
And was that just less product?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. Got it.
Spoiler. It's less. Yeah. It's less at Walmart.
In order for the product to actually work in Walmart, that makes sense. I know we're running out of time here. One thing I really wanted to cover, and I was telling I think George this earlier, but I was in Whole Foods, saw YellowBird, and just saw like the rebranding or the repackaging of it. I was like, whoa, what is this? Because it was like the old packaging was there and also new packaging. How did that come about? I think the new packaging looks great, by the way.
So you're saying it worked?
It worked. Yeah, it worked.
That was to address several issues that we had with our old packaging. The number one issue being that people didn't even know the name because it was too blurry with all the other stuff that was going on. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we just had a TikToker kind of shout us out, like kind of didn't like the rebranding, but she was like mad at the fact she couldn't recognize it. But she was like, I didn't even know the name until I saw the rebrand. And so now I know it's called YellowBird, but also how dare you rebrand? So it's kind of funny to hear that, back and forth. But we did it because we had retailers that were actively saying, hey, you're missing the heat scale on here. You're missing some flavor components on here. So in order to get into our store, we need to see those on your packaging. And they're right, that's gonna help consumers make a better educated decision to purchase. So it was that, along with new certifications that we added, updating our ingredient list, just so many things that compiled to, facilitate this whole need to do the refresh at all. If we're gonna make one change, why not make all of these changes at once? Because it's gonna cost a lot of money to make a plate change for, just one tiny thing. Why not do it all at once? So we hit a lot of things all at once with that, and then also made our brand more iconic at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, my biggest thing, when I first saw it, I'm like, oh wow, YellowBird is much more pronounced in terms of like and also the bird too. There wasn't nearly as much like kind of white space behind it, so I really like it. And of course, you also redid the website as well from that. I think we're actually almost out of time. Does anyone have any questions for George and Erin? Oh, go for it.
You got to walk all the way to the back of the room to ask your question. Sorry.
Okay. Well, yeah, the hot sauce is great. Thank you very much for making it. I got two questions. One's more of a serious one, where are you guys looking to invest in commercial agriculture to be able to hone a certain species of pepper for your lines? And then the second one is, have you ever gone to the Southwest and got peppers from Hatch, New Mexico yet and tried it out?
So the answer to the first one is not really. I mean, we would love for there to be a YellowBird pepper, but we kind of love, one of the things that we try to celebrate, and it helps us with supply chain as well, but we try to celebrate the fact that like we can get habaneros from a bunch of different places. We like that, and we like that. I understand that if we owned our own, if we had the DNA for it, and we had this like that, it would be, this is YellowBird, right? And a lot of people don't like the sriracha, like the Huy Fong sriracha. Now that they've got different peppers, the pepper was like part of the product, but we're not actively working on it. It would be super cool.
It would be super cool. I would say thumbs up to that.
Okay, cool. Sweet. That's awesome.
Yes,
but I'm the brand side.
Well, it seems like you guys are also kind of like pepper vintners at that point. If you're not just depending on one pepper, you can take blends from different regions and terroirs and be able to make it into that sauce.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay.
But we've always enjoyed like the flexibility that gives, and we have it on our bottle that like heat and color can vary by batch, because we're using, like when somebody's like, why is this batch is like hotter or less spicy than the other one? It's like, well, you go to the store, like this is my story, I don't know if it's great, but you go to the store and you get an apple, it doesn't taste the same as every apple you've ever bought at the store, and that's okay, right? Or is it? I hope it's okay. The question about Hatch chilies, I love Hatch chilies. We have made some sauces. I made a Hatch sriracha at one point. Hatch Racha or Sriracha, you decide.
Nope.
You decide. I can't do that.
Okay, all right. But we've never offered them for sale. We've never done a big thing with them.
Well, I'm from New Mexico, so the sooner you do it.
All right. We have one customer. Thank
First,
you.
Thanks so much for sharing your story. Really, really excited. I've bought your sauce before in Whole Foods, and I live in New York, so maybe I was that. I wasn't, but would have loved to have been that first customer in New York on e-com. But I'm curious. I found in my work with CPG brands that they struggle to learn about different customer segments from different retailers. Like a Walmart shopper is not necessarily the same. They may not buy from your brand the same way that somebody in Whole Foods might, or use
Wait,
your
what?
product. Oh, I mean, at least what I found in other categories.
I'm just kidding. I was just making this a joke.
But I'm curious, like, how do you guys go about learning about your customer segments and discovering the data and the insights you need to be thinking about, hey, should we launch new flavor variants, or should we think about different retail partners or just different partnerships to help expand what we're doing? Just out of curiosity.
I mean, as simple as it sounds, we just talk with them. You know, anytime we have the opportunity to call them, to talk with them in person, to be at the retail store or at an event with them, it's just about hearing their story and hearing their journey with YellowBird and finding out where they go to learn more about, you know, flavor and spice, and just really getting to know them as an individual, which I think people should do anyway. So
Yeah, we do kind of prioritize like doing those small brand things. Like we're trying to do all of the small brand things that are good and all of the big brand things that are good and match them together to make a really good brand. And I think what Erin said is awesome. Is we do that a lot, and she's been working with our CX lead to like actively call and schedule customer interviews, and like that we do also think about segments. So we've done the segmentation work, and we have done some market research as well. But yeah, I think that probably the most important thing that we do is like be involved with actual human beings, because those are our customers. Thank you.
Hey guys, thank you for having this discussion today, Mike. Thanks for moderating. My question is around kind of in those early days when you were building a cool Austin brand and trying to introduce it to customers. What was the best way to kind of increase velocities at retail and start to show these retailers that you had a great product? And kind of introducing it to customers, because you know there's a lot of great brands that come and go, they just don't get in front of the customers the right way and kind of build that loyalty. So was it demos? Was it great branding? What kind of was that big unlock for you?
yeah, I think that's kind of the same response too, is getting out in the field and being next to customers. We did all of our demos for 4 years. It was a lot. We did a full demo tour of the Southwest.
We did a demo tour of, yeah, like we had the Southwest region, Midwest, which is mostly Chicago, and then I guess Colorado and that Rocky Mountain region. And we did, like, me and Erin like went and did all of the demos. And so like demos are really important in natural, more so than like at Walmart or HEB or something, where people want to think about the product and hear about the ingredients, and they care about like if I go do a demo at Walmart or at HEB, nobody asks us about like the farmer story or like how did you guys start or whatever. They're just like, do you guys have a coupon, or like why is it so expensive? It's a different set of questions that you have. So like it depends on where you are, but like when we were trying to build that in Whole Foods, a lot of it was about getting to know the customers at the store and doing demos so people could like hear about it and know about it, and just doing it over and over again, and also like getting to know the people at the stores, because a lot of people who work in natural grocery, or a lot of people who work in a store like Whole Foods, do it because they love food, right? They didn't just accidentally end up there. Like there's a lot of jobs, I'm not going to name companies, but a lot of jobs where you might just end up there because you need a job. People at Whole Foods very rarely end up there because they need a job. They end up there because they like that sort of thing. And so we gave away a lot of t-shirts, a lot of stickers and pens and things like that. And we actually saw that being like, we would ask people about like, oh, how'd you hear about us? Well, I was at the store, and this guy, Chris, who I always talk to when I go in, would, told me that I had to try it. And we would be like the staff pick or whatever. So like getting to know the people in the retailers, like because those people can be your best unpaid they're getting paid at Whole Foods, I hope, but your best like advocates that are kind of like always on, like thinking about what is the stuff I can do that's always on. And that was it at Whole Foods.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
The question I always ask at the end of usually the end of the podcast, and I know George, you've been on, so this is for Erin. What's one book that inspired you personally, and one book that's inspired you professionally, if you're a reader?
Oh, inspired me personally.
I know these answers for you. I know your answers.
Do you?
Yes, I totally do.
I feel like this is like a couple thing now. So should I ask
So I
him?
can I guess her?
Sure.
What's my personal book?
1Q84.
I was gonna say 1984, but not that one.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a good book. Professionally, I feel like there's so many good books that I love. I mean, Essentialism is one. The long and the short of it, How Brands Grow. They're just all amazing for branding. Essentialism is great for business. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no. Essentialism comes up multiple times on the show. Multiple times. Well, thank you both so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks for having us. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks again, Mark.
And there you have it. I hope you all enjoyed it. It was so much fun to do. So great to travel down to Austin and hang out with everyone there. And if you're really enjoying this show, I highly recommend going to theconsumervc.com. Click and subscribe to the newsletter, and you'll receive all the latest fundraising news in the world of consumer, and also when a new episode drops. Thanks for listening.